Well, Torsten, I thought it was quite interesting over the panel that we came across so many positive pointers around the regulatory framework, political risk, and sort of the financing models. It seems like people have a rather positive outlook on infrastructure investments in Africa overall, and how you go about doing business around that. And your comments were rather encouraging in that context, I thought. Can you elaborate on some of the things you were...
Sure, I think it has become much clearer now in which areas of infrastructure finance is available and how the formats and structures can work. And the governments have made progress in those areas. So, for instance, we heard very clearly that the power sector is very much at the forefront of these types of infrastructure investments, but related to it both in transport and in other infrastructure that is directly commercially relevant, such as communications. There is a significant ability to structure proper Africa infrastructure projects, and there's real financing supply to deliver on these projects.
Okay. I noticed, of course, we discussed various types of drivers and for various types of investments, that's natural. But I guess also regulation can be a driver, or at least a very positive catalyst towards these investments coming in. And you mentioned some of the discussions you've been having at a very transparent level, let's say in South Africa. Can you elaborate a little bit on that as well?
Of course. South Africa is a good example of a country where regulation is becoming a very clear process-oriented tool. And so, for instance, recently the South African Treasury held market soundings with relevant parties as to the appropriate new strategy for broadband. And that was a very encouraging process, bringing in external expertise and marrying it with the know-how at the site.
Understood. And on a final note, are there any new financing models that have cropped up? I noticed there was a bit of talk of, for example, infrastructure bonds, which I thought was a positive surprise. But maybe there are also other things to mention that the markets are maturing into slowly and steadily, also in Africa.
I think one of the interesting questions that came up was around Chinese involvement and how you structure that productively and creatively. And I think there are some very interesting signs that consortia can be formed, that Chinese investor partners can be brought into Western type structures that work on the ground. And that is all about delivering projects to Africa that work and are financed at a reasonable rate.
Indeed, it would be very interesting to see in the future whether the Chinese and maybe some European or other Western partners could team up around certain models and deliver even more infrastructure projects in sub-Saharan Africa.